Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money. A Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. You guys are in for a great time on this episode. We are going to count down the top 10 downloaded podcast episodes out of 184 available episodes of the Jester Section Hiker podcast. We are going to count down the top 10 in 2 separate episodes. So today you are going to get the first 5. And then in part 2, we're going to count them down to number 1. And I've been wanting to do this episode for quite some time. It's been in my mind as a podcaster, as a YouTuber. I would be remiss to say if I didn't look at my downloads quite frequently, just to see how the podcast is doing, just to see how the episodes compare to each other topic-wise, to see which episodes receive more downloads. When I decided to look at the top 10, I just did this a couple months ago. I'm really surprised at the top 10 downloaded episodes because they have no rhyme or reason and they are not related to each other in any way whatsoever. So I said, you know what? Before the end of the year, when I'm getting ready to have my 4-year anniversary of the podcast, that 4-year anniversary mark is December 1st, and it will be 4 years old, 4 years old, almost 200 episodes, and in about a week, I'm going to hit the 200,000 download mark. And as a podcaster, that is a huge deal. So 4 years, almost 200 episodes, and almost 200,000 downloads as we head into the 5th year of the podcast starting January 1st. I've been thinking about some positive changes for the show over the past year. As you all know, we have been recording the episodes live on YouTube. We are going to continue to do that in 2024, but I'm going to mix up the audio uploads a little bit, but you guys will get information on that starting in January. So let's get to today's episode, the top 10 downloaded podcast episodes of the Jester Section Hiker podcast. And coming in at number 10, I should let you know that as I go through these episodes, I am going to give you some behind the scenes. And what I mean by that is just give you a little process on how these episodes came about, when I started talking to the guest, what I learned from the guest, and how we ended up recording the episode. So coming in at number 10, the 10th most downloaded episode is with my great friend, RVA Hiker Girl. So number 10, episode 118 with RVA Hiker Girl. RVA and I started DMing each other on Instagram in late 2020, early 2021. We were having some great conversations, and then we decided to chat on the phone. And the very first time she and I chatted on the phone, it was about 3 hours. And we talked about business. We talked about her YouTube channel. We talked about where she was heading as a YouTuber. We talked about where I was heading as a podcaster. And she's actually been on the show 3 times, but her episode number 118, titled Overcoming Your Fears, I think that is one of my number one episodes that got the most downloads in a day. So not only did she get the most downloads in a Saturday, but she comes in at number 10. And this is the episode that RVA and I had a conversation on the phone. And she sent me, and I've got the notes pulled up. She said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to put together some talking points for the podcast for our episode." And I said, "Okay, that's cool. If you want to go ahead and email them to me, that'll be fine." And when I got the email, it was 13 pages of notes. So bravo to RVA Hiker Girl. She actually wrote that episode and detailed all the notes and gave me all the talking points. And it was great as a host because all I had to do was come on and follow the notes that she had written. And one of the things that we did on this episode is we both unveiled our fears when it came to hiking. So I gave a fear, and then she gave a fear, and then we talked about getting lost. I'm actually reading from her 13-page notes right now. We talked about getting lost, being alone, being in the dark, animals, the unknown, getting hurt. And one of the things that really hit home to me in that episode is she talked about her fear of getting raped or murdered on the trail. And we went to in-depth levels about talking on that subject. So I hope you guys head on over. If you have not listened to episode number 118, Overcoming Your Fears with RVA Hiker Girl, I do recommend that you do that. And in the description, after this episode has aired, in the description over on YouTube and in the audio version, I am going to link a playlist of these top 10 episodes together. So number 10 was RVA Hiker Girl, Overcoming Your Fears. Now moving on to number 9, the 9th most downloaded episode is episode number 6. That came out in early 2020 with Christopher Condap. His trail name is iPod. Christopher Condap and I met on the Facebook page, the PCT Section Hiker Facebook page. I had put a post out on that page that I was looking for section hikers to come on the podcast. And Christopher reached out to me. We had a great phone conversation. And we decided to record an episode. He is a PCT section hike completer. He is also out section hiking the CDT. But our episode number 6 is very logistical. At the time in early 2020, before COVID, we recorded this episode and all the logistics and what you needed to do to get a permit to either through hike, section hike, day hike various parts of the PCT. And that episode went out the Saturday before COVID. So that episode aired, and I was really, really excited about that episode coming out because I had named Christopher by PCT Logistics Guy. And that episode aired, and then COVID happened, and then it pretty much blew everything up that we had talked about on that episode. But still to this day, it is the 9th most popular downloaded episode on the podcast, which blows me away, but it is very, very logistical. So if you're interested in hiking the PCT and want to know more about the logistics of that, I do recommend going back, re-downloading that episode and listening to our conversation. And here's a little tidbit. He and I actually recorded 2 separate episodes, but I was unable to air that second episode because of COVID. So that actually happened to me with a couple episodes, but for sure in episode number 6 with Christopher Condap, he and I still communicate randomly on Facebook. You guys can find him there. You can certainly find him in the PCT Section Hiker page on Facebook. Great guy, still out section hiking. And, you know, the more I think about this, the more I think I need to have him back on the show because the PCT logistics have certainly changed from early 2020. So the next one coming in at number 8 is Mr. Patrick Murphy. His episode is titled Fire and Ice. And this was the first time that I had a conversation with somebody that was out section hiking the PCT. And they explained to me that you either have a fire year or you potentially have an ice year on the PCT, which means as you're planning your section hike or your through hike, you have the potential to have wildfires on the West Coast, and you have the potential to have a lot of water runoff, high water situations, high water crossings. And as Patrick and I were talking about that on his episode, I decided to title that one the Fire and Ice episode. And that was aired in 2020 as well. And Patrick actually started off as a thru hiker. He retired from law enforcement, took some time off, decided to hit the PCT, decided that thru hiking was not what he wanted to do, took a year off, kind of regrouped, came back on and started section hiking the trail. And I will leave it at that. Since then, he has finished the trail. So he's finished the PCT and now he is working on section hiking the Continental Divide Trail. And I want to say he's about half done with the CDT. So when he's done with the CDT, he also plans to come on over here to the East Coast and start putting some miles in on the Appalachian Trail. His overall goal is to be a triple crowner. So that episode was a lot of fun. He and I laughed a lot. And we also talked about, it's coming back in my mind right now, we also talked about the clothing that PCT hikers wear versus the clothing that East Coasters wear over here on our Southern Appalachian trails. And that was a lot of fun. So episode number 4 coming in at the 8th most downloaded episode on the podcast. A lot of fun. Go back and download that episode if you don't remember that. And now we are going to move on to I'm really proud of this episode because this may have led to me eventually going live on the podcast and recording live episodes over here on YouTube. Coming in at number 7 is episode number 62, titled Section Hiking Prep Part 1. And this is when my good friend Wheezy P and I decided to go live on Zoom. This was, I believe, in the spring of 2021. We put 4 episodes together, and it was March of 2021. We put 4 episodes together titled Section Hiking Prep. And what I did, because I had no clue how to go live on YouTube or any of the software at the time, everybody was using Zoom. So Wheezy P and I decided to go live on Zoom and record 4 episodes about preparing, planning, logistics, and the 10 essentials of getting ready for a section hike. Surprisingly enough, that episode has done really well. That episode is downloaded daily. So I've checked over the past month or so, and this episode gets downloads on a daily basis. And on my YouTube channel, you can find the actual video footage, the Zoom footage of us recording this episode. And I think on that first recording, Section Hiking Prep Part 1, we had almost 30 people. So it was almost like we put a workshop together talking about preparing for long distance hiking, how that works, what that looks like. And those episodes are out there. You can find the video version on YouTube. So I believe that was Wheezy P has been on, 15, 16 times on the show now, but this is still our number 1 downloaded episode together. So let's round out today's episode, and coming in at number 6, those of you listening, that have been downloading the show from the beginning, you will remember Chris and Chris, the section hiking duo, Chris Berg and Chris Rondeau, also known as Hurley and Space Bean. To give you guys a little bit of context, before I recorded the episode with Chris and Chris, they found out that there was going to be a section hiking podcast that was going to be part of the hiking radio network of shows. And these two, Chris and Chris, were the first ones to contact me about being on the show. And I reached out to them. I gave them my phone number and I said, hey guys, just give me a call. Let's talk about it. These guys live in Chicago. They are law enforcement officers in Chicago. They called me on the phone on the way home from a section hike down in Georgia, and we had the greatest conversation. We probably talked for about an hour as they were riding in the car, and they were excited to come on the show. And if you guys go back and listen to this episode, the one thing I remember very vividly in my mind right now is on the show, I used to have the guest close out the show. And what I mean by that is the guest used to read something, whether it was a poem, whether it was a statement, whether it was something they had written that meant something very precious to them about their section hiking or something that was precious to them from the trail. And the reading from these two guys is very, very memorable. And yeah, both of them got choked up. After the recording, we all got choked up and stayed on the phone or on the line after the recording of that episode. And they are also on Facebook as well, and we keep in contact. I know that Chris Rondeau has been out section hiking the Colorado Trail. They are both still out hiking the Appalachian Trail. I see their pictures. We comment. We stay in touch with each other. So such a great duo of hiking together, and those guys, very, very comical. They also have videos out there as well of them hiking together. Man, I need to have them back on the show. So just reliving these episodes and the conversations that I've had with people prior to recording, and all of these episodes were prior to me going live on YouTube. So sadly, there is no video version, with the exception of the video of Wheezy P and I on Zoom, which you can find over on my YouTube channel. So you guys, let's count them down again real quick. Coming in at number 10 was episode number 118 with RVA Hiker Girl. Coming in at number 9 was episode number 6 with Christopher Condap, also known as iPod. Coming in at number 8 was Patrick Murphy, also known as Bacon, PCT section hiker, and now completer, since that original episode aired in 2020. Coming in at number 7 with our section hiking prep series, episode part 1 with me and Wheezy P, episode number 62. And then coming in, rounding out this part 1 episode, is the official episode number 2 of the show with Chris and Chris, Hurley and Space Bean, AT section hikers. All 5 of those episodes are downloaded on a daily basis still to this day. So if you have not listened to those episodes, I am going to make a playlist where you can come over to here on YouTube. You can hit play and you can hear those back to back to back to back. Also on those episodes, you will hear the original music that I used to play on the show with the Okie Dokie Brothers. You will hear some of the original endings that I used to do on the show. And I also originally, on, I believe, the first 10 or 15 episodes, I had a gear guy actually come on the show and we talked about gear. So that rounds out the first part of Jester's top 10 most downloaded episodes. You guys, I see you in the chat. For those of you that joined in on the live recording, if you are listening to the audio version of the show, come on over to YouTube, watch the live version of the show, join in on the chat. become part of the Section Hiker community that's hanging out here over on YouTube. In the meanwhile, truly appreciate everything you all. Part 2 coming on the next recording. Until then, thanks for listening. Be safe out there. And as always, happy section hiking.
Hello, saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.